This podcast is sponsored by CSMI, the maker of the HUMAC Norm isokinetic system. Purchase a new or refurbished machine, or you can even upgrade an existing system to bring it up to date with all the latest testing and training applications. Please visit csmisolutions.com to view all of their available products, including the HUMAC Norm isokinetic system, the HUMAC Balance portable computerized balance system, and Sportswear Online. CSMI. Better data leads to better results.
Hello, and welcome to the Everything PT podcast with Matt Taylor and Daniel Bodkin. Please do not consider anything you hear to be medical advice. Just a couple of guys ranting about everything PT. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Everything PT podcast. This is episode 12. I am one of your hosts, Matt Taylor, joined by my esteemed colleague, Daniel the Bodkin. Again, Daniel, how you doing, bud?
I'm well. Just living the dream here in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes. Daniel, we just got to hopefully send you a patient here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Really cool.
That would
be connect.
Great. That's
yeah.
Surprised me with that. You had a patient that was coming back for the summer.
Yeah,
that's kind of my niche now, is really kind of going from post-discharge to return to play. And I understand she's almost at that stage anyway. So it kind of works out well.
She should be reaching out very soon to you. So
very cool.
We just touched base, but
looking forward to that.
Yep. So we also have a very special guest today, which is pretty exciting. This is Kelly Rodriguez. And Kelly is a board certified neuroclinical specialist, assistant professor at, correct me if I get this wrong, Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady. Is that correct?
Oh, Our Lady University. That is
Our Lady University.
Been a
clinic. Did I get it? Okay. Been a clinician for 18 years. I've worked alongside of you for just a few months as a traveler, about working with TBI, CVAs, spinal cord injury. Presented for the APTA, just overall, just killing it in our field. So welcome to the podcast here, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah. We're thrilled that you're here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do for Fran U, if you could, please.
Yeah. So, as Matt said, I've been a clinician for 18 years, but I've been a PT for 22. So the last 4 years have really been spent in academia. My areas of focus, of course, are TBI, stroke, traumatic brain injury, vestibular population, and I teach that content here. I was really fortunate early on in my career. I got to work at the Rehab Institute of Chicago, which is now the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. And that's what turned me on to teaching. I started teaching for their academy. I took students. And that made me start to think, okay, this is something that I might actually want to do long term. So when I moved back to New Orleans, I started doing some adjunct teaching with LSU and found that I really liked it. And this opportunity came available in Baton Rouge. And I found out that it's the first new DPT program in Louisiana in the last 40 years. So I was like, I can't walk away from that, right? That's a big challenge. So I'm a founding member. We got it off the ground. We received our accreditation last May. And we graduated our first cohort, so we're very excited about all that. So I teach in the neuro content, Neuro 1, Neuro 2. I do the advanced clinical practice for neuro. I now oversee cardiopulmonary, which is a course that I'd like to teach eventually, but we use Rehab Essentials for that. So it's kind of an online course, but I just kind of oversee it. And then what else do I do for them? So I'm the admissions chair. If you have any questions about getting in a PT school, I can answer those. And I'm also on the curriculum committee. I oversee our social media. And then for fun, APTA Louisiana secretary, and I'm the chair of the digital communications committee for the Academy of Neurologic Physical Therapy. Those are my hobbies.
Awesome.
You're pretty busy over there.
I am. Oh yeah. And I just started back working on, did I tell you, Matt, I'm going back to school to get my PhD. Did I tell you this?
No. Wow. That's awesome.
So I'm really excited about it though. It's
Good
really,
deal.
I'm going to be honest with you, after being in the field for that long and then going back and learning a lot of this stuff, it's fantastic. It's one of the best choices I've ever made. Now it's going to take me forever, but I'm really excited about that. That's my other hobby.
All right, let's just get down to business here. You mentioned hobbies. Right above your head, we have, Grogu. Of those who don't know, it's Baby Yoda. One big question: how excited are you for Kenobi?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I'm just so thrilled that, they got Ewan McGregor to play that role. If it just would not have worked for me if it had been somebody else. So I'm very excited, but I'm also excited about Stranger Things too. I had to throw that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that was coming.
Yeah,
Friday.
same day. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. But
and it's Memorial Day weekend, and who has time to watch that on Memorial Day weekend?
Very true.
They even say Hayden Christensen is going to make an appearance as Vader. I don't know how it'll work, but
Okay, that would be fantastic. I try not to watch all the fan-based stuff because I do worry that they'll leak some of it, and I like to see it. Like when I see it, I want to see it first time. I don't want to hear all the backstory, but so yeah, that would be great. I love Hayden Christensen. I think he's
the way.
He's underrated as a Darth Vader.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Now we got the Star Wars stuff out of the way. One of my big things with doing this podcast is, I've been in the PT mill. I've gotten burnout. And I know a lot of other, young therapists or even, not so young therapists are in the same way. I'm adjunct faculty at a couple different places. It's funny you mentioned Rehab Essentials or them because I actually make content for them
Oh, cool.
as well. So I'd love to get your some feedback from you on that. But let's say you have somebody that wants to get into the academic world. How can they go from being that, 9 to 5 or sorry, probably more like 7 to 5 clinician and then getting into the academic world?
It started, like I said, in Chicago, and I got on board with their academy. So it's like this internal teaching system that they have where they do continuing education. So it was something where it was a part of my professional development. And we hosted, continuing education courses. I did like a free course with vestibular training for our staff. So little bits and pieces. So even if you have like an organization, I did some of that for Toro. We did like a spinal cord injury course. So little opportunities like that, try to volunteer for those kinds of things, because that really gets you kind of a toe in the water and not just this full on jump, before you like, hey, I'm leaving my job and going and doing this. So that kind of opened me up to it too. And then also when I was in New Orleans, one of my good friends, Rachel Wellens, she's like my counterpart at LSU. She had a ton of labs that she needed, assistance with. So, she just reached out and I helped with some of those labs. And that also too got me a little bit of, again, a toe in the water to see if that was something that I really wanted to do. And now the only thing is that, sometimes clinics are not the best at recognizing that that's a part of professional development and that's going to help their clinic. So I found that, at RAC, I was given time off to do those things and it didn't count against me. But at Toro, it was something where I actually had to use PTO to do. So I think sometimes that can be a little bit of a barrier. Now, the things that we bring in a lot of adjunct faculty for here at FranU we have these cables, they're like case application-based learning experiences. So basically it's a case and we have an adjunct faculty come in and they discuss the particulars of the case with the student. And we try to do those on Fridays because we find that outpatient orthopedic clinic, like they'll do those long hours Monday through Thursday. So Fridays are a good day for people to come in. So, I think that those are just some examples of how you can do it. Or, there are times, so the person who we co-teach neuro together, I invited her to come in and help me as a lab assistant, right? And really that was just my way of getting her to just come to help me do this job. And so she kind of helped with some of the labs and she was like, oh wait, this is actually kind of fun. And I'm like, yeah, it's really cool. So it does lead to full-time employment if that's something that you want to go to. So there's always little kind of bits and pieces on ways to get in. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. So I started out I was a cadaver lab instructor. So
Oh yeah.
New PT students. And it was nice. We were borrowing cadavers from a chiropractor program. So, you didn't have to spend all the hours dissecting, you get right in there. And then that led to me helping out with the palpations course. Then that led me to getting started with teaching with an athletic training program. And
yeah,
I'm making some content for Rehab Essentials, which is very cool in its own. It's kind of, I see it a little bit newer way of, the new way of doing didactic. So it's kind of exciting, but like you said, I've always only just had like a toe or a foot in that world while keeping in the clinic side. But like you said, it's so much fun. I've always enjoyed doing it. It really doesn't feel like work to me.
Yeah. And like, something inside of me, there's a quote. I never mispronounce his name every time. It's Chuck Palahniuk. And he has this quote about, the goal isn't to live forever. We all die. The goal is to create something that will live forever. Right. So like, I feel like that's kind of what I'm doing teaching. Right. I tell my students, if I can just reach 5, I'm neuro, it's a hard sell, right? Everybody's coming in to, be ortho. Right. So I'm up there practically tap dancing to get them interested in what I'm talking about. So I figure if I can just get 5 of them in the room interested in what I'm talking about and talk about evidence informed practice and get them to kind of carry that torch, then that's a way for me to kind of live on in the profession. So really, yeah, it's about like, okay, I want to educate the masses, but it's also about my own personal need to want to stay in physical therapy for as long as I can. So.
Looking for a way to improve sport-specific training with your athletes? Then you have to check out Blaze Pods. Blaze Pods is a neurocognitive reaction training intervention that can be incorporated into your sessions for patients throughout the treatment spectrum. Visit blazepod.com, enter code EVERYTHINGPT at checkout, and save 15% off your order today. Hey, all you rehab specialists out there, do you have an isokinetic dynamometer just sitting around your clinic not being used? Little known fact, isokinetic machines that aren't used regularly are at higher risk for bouts of sadness. Help your machine out and take CSMI's newest CEU course, Isokinetics 101 online, created by me, Daniel Bodkin, and learn how to use all the exercise and testing applications available on your machine. With new and exciting rehab techniques in your toolbox, your sad isokinetic machine can become an active member of the rehab team again and regain its happiness. Isokinetics 101 online by CSMI has been approved for 8 credit hours for athletic trainers, physical therapists, and physical therapy assistants. Contact your state board for details on specific requirements. This course is available at humacnorm.com/courses/isokinetics-101.
Kelly, you mentioned evidence-based practice and medicine. How do you think we can be able to implement some science and research, at a faster rate than we are currently?
Yeah.
Or tell me a little bit about the process currently now, because it's been about a decade for me and Dan.
So, I'm very fortunate during the time that I have been a PT, because there has been a massive paradigm shift in terms of neurologic physical therapy. We've come from these traditional methods and practices, and we've evolved. So I've seen how it's complicated on how to get those things that we know that there's evidence behind into actual practice. Like I've participated in, hospital-wide education, promotion of outcome measures, and intensive walking training. And it's difficult, even at the highest level, the highest functioning. Now, I think that people are doing a much better job, but I think one of the keys that we try to, focus on is you got to get to the students first. Like one of the reasons why I wanted to teach also is because, I felt like that was a way to influence practice in terms of embracing evidence. Evidence is to get it at the root, right? So, we really, our director of research, Phil Page, does a really good job of getting our students excited in the very beginning about research. Now, sometimes it might be a little overkill, right? Like we get a little too nerdy about it, and they're just like, could you please just stop talking about this? So, but I think when we get them on board, I think it makes it a lot easier. But from my perspective, from a neuro perspective, there are a lot of tools that are out there that are helping us to do this, right? So when I first started teaching, I went to CSM, had this, it was a pre-conference course for neuroeducators and how to implement evidence into their, into the academia, into practice. And then also too, I'm a part of the Academy of Neurologic Physical Therapy. Those cats are busting it. It's like worker bees behind the scenes, creating all of these great resources for individuals to use to get because the biggest barrier that we've had for so long, they say it takes 12 to 17 years for an idea from the lab to actually get to the clinic. And the biggest barrier for that, I think for a long time, was PTs just didn't have time to sit down and read all that research. So the ANPT is doing a great job of going through and disseminating this information, reading it, summarizing it, and getting it out to the masses. So they reduce that barrier. There's a paper that was released, I want to say 2021. It was called this Moving Forward Position paper. And even if you're not in neuro, this is the one thing you get from this podcast. hope that you take away is that you need to read this paper,
Writing
because it
down.
talks about like, here's where we were, here's where we are, here's where we're going, and how to not just let go of the past, but to evolve, because people
Yes.
just are having a hard time doing that. So they've got great resources. They have these best practice initiatives like Intensity Matters, Evidence Elevates. So there are tons of resources that are out there for clinicians and for academicians to incorporate this into their practice. There's this big, I don't know if you've heard of them, there's these 4-step conferences, or there's these step conferences where it's like the neuro and the peds people all get together every 10 years and they talk about, okay, what's the future look at? And those are great resources too. Like you can Google that, they can talk to you about, okay, what's the next step? What do we need to look at and what's coming down the pipe? So I just think there are a ton of resources that are out there. And I think if people aren't implementing, you know, evidence into practice, it's not because tools aren't out there for you, right?
Agreed.
It's because maybe you're just not being proactive. Now, I will say this, if y'all interrupt me, whatever you want to stop me, there are 2 barriers to this. So
Please.
From an academic standpoint, right, like there's, okay, what's entry level, right? And from a clinic standpoint, what's the practice environment that they're going to? Okay. So for me, I'm a neurospecialist, right? So like for me, entry level is kind of maybe up here in neuro. I might go a little overkill with like some of the things that they actually need to know from a neuro perspective. And I've had to back off of that since I've been an educator, because like I'm just trying to, some of them are just struggling to put on a gait belt, you know? So like, I'm like, okay, wait, maybe I'm going at this a little too high level. So like, I have to remind myself, they need to know basic skills, right? Like they need to be able to move somebody from point A to point B. What
As
are
a
the
clinician.
Yeah, right. So I think that I expected maybe a little too much. It was a little bit lofty, you know, and I think I have to back down and be like, okay, I've got to sprinkle in what this current practice is, what's the evidence that's out there, but I still have to teach them how to be basic PTs in the neuro population, right? So on the flip of that, so on the flip of that, then you have like, so let's say you do this great job of teaching them evidence-informed practice, and here's what the cutting edge is, and they go out into the clinic and they work in a clinic where maybe that's not the practice methods of the individuals in that clinic. And the students come back to you and they're like, well, why didn't you teach us this? And you're like, I'm still struggling with how to answer that question, right? So I think it's a multi-level issue. You know, it's a part of like the academics' responsibility to get it out there and disseminate it, but it's also a part of, you know, clinics' responsibility to try and stay at the forefront. And I think that's hard for clinicians. You know, I think that's a really difficult thing. Like it's not easy to process that. I know you guys have long days, and to take the time to sit down to read an article is, you know, and have a journal club and talk about it. I think that's a really difficult. So I feel like we're kind of in a little bit of a conundrum.
One thing I noticed when I was in school, and then when I got out, now granted, I'm ortho world, but I'm wondering, I would see that there was a disconnect between what you learned in school, what the NPTE was asking you, and then what you would actually do.
Well, we can talk about that too.
Yeah. Is that kind of the same way in the neuro world?
Yeah, it is. You know, so I like that you asking about the NPTE. We just went to an item writing course. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to better, like I'm never taught before. I barely never wrote test questions before. And my counterpart who teaches ortho, she never done it before either. So we took this item writing course to prepare our students, you know, to write questions that'll help prepare our students for this. So we got to learn a lot about their processes and how they go about determining what they include on this exam. And y'all, it's a lot. So
a lot to writing in one question, I'm sure.
Right. But like, even for them to determine what's on that test. So what they have to do is they have to, like they talked about, was it 4 areas? I want to say it's like current practice, entry level, what's essential, and what's universal. And so what they do, their process is they do this practice analysis. So they compile data, they send out invitations for volunteers from all licensed PTs. And these PTs report on what, you know, their practice environments are like, what their knowledge skill is required. They report on all the stats of what they're required to do in their job. And that's where the NPTE gathers that information. So they're looking at what's happening in clinics today, and that's how they garner what they're going to put on those tests. So I actually, when Matt had sent me, a couple of questions, I pulled up the practice analysis. They just published one in 2020, and I can send it to you guys. And if you scroll down, you can see, like, when it gets to modalities, they start talking about how many clinics, and they'll talk about the averages of modalities. And I was surprised. Those numbers are pretty high. So I think it would be interesting for you guys to look at it.
Yeah.
But I can send it to you. So, but that's so with the NPTE, so I feel like there is, there's like, okay, so they're investigating what's happening in current practice. Clinicians and academicians are trying to get, okay, what's hot off the presses, but it takes a long time for hot off the presses to get to the clinic. So then that means it takes a long time to get to the NPTE.
So, Kelly, this makes me think about, I'll pick on ultrasound because I think we all love to hate ultrasound. If you've been around the clinic for a while, right? So the last paper I read in ultrasound was, there were two groups broken up, and the group that had the ultrasound that was not plugged in seemed to be the more therapeutic group. Yeah, with their outcomes. So that was kind of like, I don't know if it's fair to say the nail in the coffin for ultrasound, but and if the NPTE is, evidence-based, then there is still a lot of ultrasound on the NPTE. We go with watts and, per centimeter squared and all that stuff. And I'm just, as a field, trying to get away from more passive modalities and onto, like active interventions, engaging like the supervisory role of physical medicine kind of thing. Like, I feel like we need to go, or what's your thoughts on it?
Well, so I think when you're talking about active engagement, but back to your NPTE, the other thing too, though, is because ultrasound is still being used in the clinic, we still have to make sure, and the NPTE still has to make sure that people are safe to use it, right? So they have to know the contraindications, they have to know all this stuff. So
just keep it moving, baby. That's it, right?
Sorry.
Sorry.
So when you're talking about active, are you talking about, when you said supervisory exercise, are you talking about so I think I maybe misunderstood what your original.
Oh, sorry. So, I've talked to a couple people. George Davies comes to mind. I don't know if you got to listen to our past podcast, but he had the thought, and I tend to agree with him, that physical therapists are going to take more of a management, like be in charge of physical medicine in the future, and be able to order some tests and measures too, and kind of be the clinician who is in charge of that thing, and instead of being the having a I don't even know what I'm trying to say, like passive treatments and modalities more of a thing. So which could still be part of our profession, I think, but maybe in a lesser extent.
When you talk about passive, I think passive and active engagement, in the neuro population, if you look at all the literature that's out there, you look at the principles of neuroplasticity, they're all actively engaged, right? It's intensity, it's use it or lose it, it's use it and improve it, it's salience, it's all, task specificity, all the stuff that really requires some action on the part of the individual. So stretching is great, but that's not going to cut it. Like, you have to work really hard. You have to do a little bit more. So I think from a neuro perspective, the passive modalities have just really kind of gone the way of I don't want to say the dinosaur, but they kind of have, Right. So it's really more about like active practice. And in terms of like, okay, the supervisory role, one of the big things that we've been pushing in the neuro population is regular checkups with your physical therapist. It's not, okay, we're going to see you. We talked about this a little bit when you were in New Orleans, like it's a lifelong, disability that they've got. Right. And that's not, okay, I'm going to see you for three times a week for 12 weeks and then you're done. Right. You're finished. So like it's a lot. So, I talked about this whole catch and release, right? So we catch them for a little while, we treat them for a little bit, we get them as good as we can, or what they can manage. And then we release them into the wild with their home exercise program, the education of their caregivers, their family, those kinds of things. And then we catch them again a year later. We see where they're at. We look at their measures. We look at where they were outcome measure wise in the last visit. Have they declined? Have they improved? Is it something where we need to bring the family members back in? So I do see it, especially from a neurologic perspective, that we do need to be overseers of this. I think that we're able to tell, a little bit more of a patient that you've seen over the years, if they've had some type of decline, and is there something that we can do about it? And then, back to the principles of neuroplasticity, you have to have enough repetition, you have to have enough practice, and 1 hour a day with a PT is not going to hit that level that you need. So you really have to call upon the family members, the caregivers. So it is kind of a management perspective. I was just talking to my colleague Jamie, who teaches the ortho content, but she also teaches our health and wellness content too. And we decided we're getting too old to sit at these desks for too long, so we have to walk like a couple times a day, right? So we do like these walks and we talk about a little topic, right? So the topic today was wellness, the wellness population, and from 18 years old, we should start managing these people. Not just a checkup with your doctor, but we need to come in and we need to do exercise testing. We need to look at your body and follow you. I mean, think about if you had all that data for years, and how like physical activity we know prevents stroke, cardiovascular. Like, why are we not in
like
there?
Like the dentist with, cavities, fillings, root canals, preventative maintenance kind of thing. And we do not have that right now. It's very much a retroactive system that we have too.
So how do you, let me ask you guys this. Sorry, now I'm gonna ask you a question. So how do you think we can change that mentality? How do you think we shift gears to get to that point to where we are like the dentist? You come and you get like a checkup with us every year. And how do you think we do that?
I'm a big believer in going back to 4th grade, right? Playing Monopoly with the family. When you're losing at a game, you don't just keep trying to come back and win. You throw the table and the game is ruined and you get to start over.
Okay.
I really foresee, and I hate being a Debbie Downer, but I really see PT coming to almost like crashing into a mountain soon. You know, we can see the mountain in the distance and the plane's getting closer and closer. At what point are we going to just, I think we need to kind of overhaul the physical therapy system in the US. That might just be from the orthopedic outpatient
I agree.
system.
Like even look at like the elderly population. I'm obsessed with outcome measures, right? And gait speed is the one that I'm like super obsessed with. There's so much information that you can get from that. Like I was just looking at a study the other day, and it talked about like if you walked less than 1 meter per second, you were at risk for having some type of massive event within the next 5 years. And I'm like, wait, okay,
makes me
this is
think
great
about,
information.
for a lot of our older patients or just older population, one thing that they do actively once a week is go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Right. That's a big part of their exercise. Well, that can now be replaced by having things delivered to you. Your food is delivered.
Yes.
So I don't know how that's going to affect. It's not even just the older people, but let's say, the next 20 years, you have somebody who's not, they're not going to the grocery store. They're not cutting their own yard or, their own grass.
Yeah.
They're cutting out all these just normal, ADLs. So what's going to happen with that? And that's only going to make, the PT world get better, in my opinion. No, I do have a question for you about telehealth, right? Is telehealth a way to continue to engage that person on a regular basis?
I think so. So I'm going to be honest with you, COVID really sucked bad, but it taught us a lot, right? It taught us a lot how to manage some really difficult situations. And so before I started the PhD, I was doing like a half day in a clinic. It's a vestibular clinic. And what they were doing is they were treating, they were doing telehealth with those individuals. And I found it to be like, so they specialize in vestibular. Like people come from all over the state to see them. And, they have people driving 2 and 3 hours. And they were like, okay, wait a minute. Is there a way that we can make this work for these individuals where they don't have to, they can just come in for like the assessments and but if we can watch them from afar and do these exercises, then this might be a much easier way. So I think that is here to stay, especially for rural areas, Louisiana and pretty much all rural. So like, it's a good way to keep those individuals, engaged. And we are integrating that into our education. So, our program director, Kirk Nelson, is really good at designing like all these cables and these interprofessional education things. And he did it's a patient consultation where they work with, I want to say it's either PA or nursing, and they evaluate a patient via telehealth. We have a standardized patient that comes in who used to be a nurse. She's fantastic. She gives them a hard time. It's great. So she acts like a real patient. And so they get exposure to it and they get practice with it. And I think that we need to capitalize on the fact that these kids have been learning, via this kind of format, right? Like I think they're going to have a skill that a lot of, most older folks didn't really maybe have in the beginning. So I definitely see that as being a way to kind of extend our lives and extend what we can do with these people.
So Kelly, is this like a lab that you guys are doing with telehealth?
Yeah,
Okay, because that would be great. Because like Daniel and I were talking about this before you came on, and like there was none of that when we went to school. Like we didn't even have the thought that it was a possibility to happen. And now, like 10 years later, catapulted into telehealth world. People are making a lot of money. Big business is involved in this too. So
yeah, I definitely think I definitely think it's here to stay. And I think that the savvy people who are able to pick up on it and use it and run with it, those are the people who are staying in front. My dad always says you have to stay in front of the 8 ball. That's a good way to stay in front of the 8 ball.
You know who's pretty savvy? United Healthcare.
Let's talk about those individuals.
Yeah.
Would you guys like to talk about them?
Was that a smooth segue or what?
I loved it.
Yeah. So like the artificial, and I don't even know where to start with this sucker. The artificial intelligence created by United Healthcare.
He was just talking about.
You sent me that. We have been talking about this for the West Virginia State Board for months now. This is terrifying, y'all. And PT, I think, should be.
What are they doing, Matt? And I'll try to link or put something down on the screen or put it in the description.
Yeah, we'll put a link on the description and in the show notes and stuff. But so Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong here, but United Health came out with an artificial intelligence kind of like algorithm. You type in your signs, symptoms of, say, back pain, you can't bend forward or you can't bend backwards, and bam, you're going to get hit with, single knee to chest, lumbar trunk rotations and different things. And Kelly, you sent me a little snippet of where there's actually, Daniel, something that reads your emotion as a patient and it will respond appropriately, which I'm downright curious to see how that happens. But
crazy.
Bizarre.
So I don't know who, one of my coworkers, Mary Cantor, the one who teaches with me in neuro, she sent this to our group and she's like, is this real life? So I started looking into it. And of course, so Dr. Dunn, Sharon Dunn, taught me in PT school, and I see her on kind of a fairly, regular basis, like once a year. I sent it to her via Facebook. I'm like, did you see this? What's happening? And she's like, yes. She's like, we have to get in front of it. Like we have to be proactive in this whole situation. So when you hear about it initially, you think, well, think about what drew you into physical therapy school. We just had interviews the other day, and all of our students are like, I had a physical therapist. I was injured when I was in high school, and that person just really got me to the next level. I really connected with that individual. So the human connection component of physical therapy is probably the greatest asset that we have, right? So you keep thinking artificial intelligence, that's not going to be able to replace the person. Well, I started looking into, we just got a virtual reality device, Virtualis, and I started looking into just ideas to study. And I looked at this review and it talked about how they're starting to look at how artificial intelligence can read emotions. So I started like, okay, wait, how are, because that's the thing I was, worried about how they respond to that. So I started digging a little deeper, and they've
like
been
a mood ring,
yes,
right? Yeah,
pretty much. So I've been digging a little deeper, and they're using it in the military. So that's where a lot of this stuff starts, right? So they've been looking at stress management in those individuals in the military. They look at their physiologic responses and how does artificial intelligence respond to that. Now it's been in the stress management component. So I think that they're probably going to try to make the jump too. But even, I mean, here's the thing. We can't keep saying, oh, they'll never do it. They'll never do it. Because I think that's too passive.
They're doing it.
We really have to have a little bit of emphasis. But just to add on to this though, so one of the girls, we were doing like this little group, we were learning how to use Virtualis, and she made the comment, we were talking about it, and she made the comment, she said, well, how many times have you seen a PT clinic where they keep patients over what they should be keeping them because they're trying to bill? This would eliminate that. And I was like, oh,
sure.
So she might have a point there, right?
It's a very valid point.
Probably what United is probably going after, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think people want to be around people. Like they want someone to put their hands on them.
Yeah.
At least in the neurologic population, I feel like in the orthopedic population as well, too. And don't get me wrong, I think we'll probably lose a percentage of people to this because people are, they need convenient times and they can't necessarily come when the clinic is open. And I think it's going to take a chunk out of people's bottom line. So we've got to figure out a way to either be a part of it, get in front of it, sell ourselves as we're the best component of this. So we really, I mean, I feel like we got a battle coming up.
Yeah, that all works until a bot pretends to be me.
Yeah, I know, right?
The bot shows up, call him C3PO.
There you go.
Now, if it looked like C3PO, I might actually go to that.
You'd be interested in that, you nerds.
I might actually do that.
No, in all seriousness, like I think the AI might not be a bad thing in the hands of a seasoned physical therapist who's in control of it and can help harness it. But I think about the Terminator, Daniel, and about like that sort of thing comes to mind. Maybe we'll just get taken over by,
like I said, just flip the table, pick a new game.
I'm a massive conspiracy theorist, so like I love the Terminator, right? Like it's totally happening. Like I can't tell you.
It could happen.
I'm like, this is it. It's happening. They're about to take over the world.
I know.
Kelly, where can people find you? Somebody has a question for you or is interested in anything that we talked about today, especially the Star Wars references. How can people get a hold of you?
So I'm actually, so you can find me. I can give you my email. It's Kelly, Kelly .Rodriguez, RODRIGUEZ @franu.edu, or you can find us on social media on Instagram, franu _DPT, which I think I heard on one of your podcasts that you're not on Instagram.
Oh, I every once in a while I'll share something to it. It's mainly just our podcasts.
All right.
My social media is that, and then just videos of me working out.
I'm working on him, Kelly. I'm working on him.
Okay,
He's come a long way with social media here.
Yes, fantastic. Good. So that's where you can find me. So
awesome. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will catch up with you guys next week. All right. Thanks. Bye.